Right, so I've got the interior pretty well underway, and now I just want to make sure that my other views, like the section, are a little bit more complete and indicate the ground level. And so here we've got a ground floor level that's at 0, and I want to add in a ground surface that's a little bit below that. And so in Revit, you have the Toposurface tool for that, and it's on the Massing and Site tab. You'll see Toposurface and all the other tools that relate to the site and your exterior elements. So I'm going to go back to my site floor plan, which is actually in wireframe, so I'll change that to hidden line. And you can see then that I'm viewing it from above, so I can see the roof and the gutters and the other things. And then to use the Toposurface tool, you just need to select it, and then it'll begin with it on place point. So if you go to do something else, click on the modify button or any of these other tools, you just need to choose place point to start creating your surface again, and that's the main tool you use to create points.
Does it have to be on plan or?
Yeah, so the site floor plan is the best one.
Site floor plan.
Yep. And then on the once you've chosen place point, on the options bar it'll give you the elevation, and so like I was saying, I'm just going to make it a little bit below my ground floor level and type in -50 there. Oh, just on the green options bar. So you need to choose place point, and then you'll see that option come up. Elevation, or the tool before that. Yep. Once you've chosen place point, then I'm just making my elevation -50 on the options bar up here. So the green bar above your drawing. Just above your drawing, you've got this green bar, and then the elevation should come up there. -50. Right, and so then to create my surface, I'm just going to click a point that's outside of these elevation views, because I want the elevations to cut through my ground as well. So I'm going to click outside all of those, and I'm just going to make 4 points. And once you give the third point, it'll give you a surface. You need at least 3 points to create a surface, and I'll create a 4th one there as well. So that's a flat surface that is now going to be already created just below my floor level, and I'm going to switch to a 3D view just so you can see it. Okay, so you can see there we've got the floor there just going down slightly below the walls, the 50mm that it has before it gets to the ground level. But then just to give you a better idea how this tool works, I'm going to go back to place point. You don't need to add these extra points, but I just want to show you what happens when you make points of different heights. So I'm going to change the elevation there to 2000. So that's 2 metres. And now if I click a point up here, you'll see a contour line. So it does the contours by default, I think, at every metre. So I'll change the height again to say 5000 and do yet another point up above. And now we've got some more contour line. And so when you're creating ground surfaces that have more variation in height, you can easily change that value and just click onto the points where the different heights need to be, and you can see it's just like joining the dots. So you can't trace around things, it doesn't work that way. You want to think of it more like a shrink wrap that's going to go over all of the ground, and then later on, if you want to have some of it as pathways or different ground materials, break it up into different surfaces once you've made the entire ground surface. Just create the first 4 points, and then just watch what I'm doing after that, and I'll have a look at any problems. But you should just need those first 4 points. You won't need to do any of this extra part. Yeah, this is just to give you a better idea how the tool works. So if I'm going to change that to, say, minus 3,000. Then I'll click some points down below, and that's going to make it slope down the other way. So normally you'd have a survey or something that tells you what the heights are. So the black line there is at every 5 metres, I think. And I'll change this now to maybe 10,000 and do some more points that are up high. So you can see it's really starting to slope a lot based on the contours there.
So if you put 2 points together and one's really high and one's really, really low, that will form a curve?
Yeah, exactly. That's right, exactly it. And yeah, well that's pretty close to being like that as it is. It could look a bit strange if you put them too close together. And so normally you want to have a retaining wall when you've got a really dramatic slope. But I'll go to the 3D view just so you can see now how it looks. And so orbiting there you can see how that surface is sloping. But also, because of the way I've made it, it's starting to wrap around the building, which can be a bit awkward. So there you can see it's going from these high points down to the low points and giving this envelope that doesn't look great in front of the building. So a good option there is to come back and add more points in that are closer to the building height. So I can go back now to place point, and I'll make the height there my original height, which was minus 50. And then you can see if I add points over here, it'll adjust the whole surface to give us the gradation between those different points. And so same over here, rather than having that part that wraps around, I can just have it flattened out. So that might be a more realistic surface. And if you know the slope of your site, you can always add in those points with all the different heights. But as I was saying, you don't need to do that for this project. So I'll go back and just do what you should be trying to do at first. I'll delete that and make a new one. Using Toposurface again, all you need to have with place point is the elevation set there to minus 50, and make sure you click the points that you're creating outside of your elevation views. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's as far as you need to go. Tick to finish, and that'll give you a flat surface because all the points are at the same height. If I go into a 3D view now, you can see it is just a perfectly flat plane. Zooming right in there, you'll see the floor should stick up from that surface. And so now, if I go into a section view, I'll change it to hidden line just so it's easier to look at. We've got a ground line. So that's really one of the main purposes here, once you've created that surface, so that it gives you a ground line and the ground hatch below your floor and the building. So that'll come up automatically as long as you've created the surface. And a lot of it does depend. If you're not totally au fait with the way these elevation views and the section views are set up, you might have to look at where they are before you can create your surface properly. So if I look now at the north elevation, because I've made that surface go outside those elevation views, I know that if we go to hidden line, I'll just hide that image, you don't need to see that. Okay, so again, I've got the ground surface there giving me a ground line. And so have you had a look at drawing ground lines for elevation views when you've done hand drawing? Yeah, you must have. That's that's the fundamental requirement with an elevation. No? Yeah, but if you've drawn an elevation, you must have drawn an elevation in visual communication. Yeah. So yeah, internal elevations. Yeah. Yeah. So internal elevations are a bit different. Internal elevations are more like sections, but a true elevation should always have a ground line. And so that's basically the way an elevation should always be set up, but should you show the ground hatch in an elevation view? In an elevation, should you see a ground hatch like you have here? No, definitely not. That's one of the real conventions with drafting, that you don't show a hatch for your ground surface. Whereas in a section you do. And that's one of the ways you'll tell the difference between a section view and an elevation. Because a section will show the hatch. Exactly. And so what you can do in Revit to disable or to turn off the hatching is just select your Toposurface, right click, and then go to override graphics in view. And you might have had a look at that option already. It's a really interesting thing to play with. So if you haven't had a look at that option already, just try and experiment with it with some different things in Revit. It's a really good one to play with. So with this Toposurface selected, when I right click and then go to override graphics in view, I'm going to choose by element, and then you can see all of the different display attributes come up. And so I'm going to go down to cut patterns and just turn visible off. Clicking OK. Now you can see the Toposurface still shows, but it doesn't show the hatching, and that makes it a true elevation. So it's just one of those options you have, similar to when you right click and go to hide in view and choose one of the options there. So if you haven't had a look at that option there, override graphics in view, it's a really useful one. But I'll just hide those reference planes, and the levels can stay for the time being actually. Maybe that ceiling level I'll hide as well. So that's the way an elevation should be showing. And so you can do that in each elevation. Okay, so again, just to do that again, select the Toposurface, right click, override graphics in view, by element. And then go down to cut patterns and just turn off that visible option. And there we go. So the final thing then is to look at it in 3D, and so you would have seen there that it's created the surface, it's showing it, but it's just a flat surface. It doesn't show the ground underneath or the earth underneath. Whereas in the section we can see that it does definitely have earth below the ground line there. So why can't we see it in the 3D view? And the reason is it's not being cut. So if you remember, in 3D views you can use a section box to cut anything, and I'll duplicate my view and just give it a new name. I'll call it section box outside. And then turn on the section box. So hopefully you're used to using the section box option, and you can turn that on in any 3D view. And once you cut the ground surface, then you'll see the hatch. Okay, so now you can see there it's showing the earth below the ground line, just like it does in a section view. In a shaded view it's even more obvious. So that's a really useful thing to have, even for 3D views. I'll just hide that so that it looks like the building's sitting on a solid surface, not just a flat plane. But all of those things are just adjustments to the view. Creating the surface in the first place, especially for interiors projects, should be a pretty simple process, just creating the 4 points you need to make a rectangular surface. And then if you need to fine-tune the views after that, don't worry, because you can take your time fixing those up. But again, the main thing is just to make sure you know about that Toposurface option, and use the place points option to create a basic flat surface. And again, because it's an interiors project, you don't need to worry about showing the slope and other things like that. You're really just using it as a graphical tool to give the ground line and the surface below your building.